Okay, so what are some of the theories around innovation? Well, there is quite a bit out there, and there's a lot of research that goes into this space. It is one of the key focus areas of business at the moment. So there is a lot of investment in terms of trying to really nail down this idea of innovation and how we can apply it and um, what its consequences of innovation are. So I just want to pick out some of the really big ideas, some of the ones that are a little bit more cemented, and we can talk through some of these. The first two theories of innovation, which are really juxtaposed, is this idea of radical or incremental innovation. And we can juxtapose these at the different ends of the spectrum to sort of understand them a little bit better. So, radical innovation is innovation that occurs when we have an existing business model or an existing process or an existing revenue stream, and we change that, replace it, and change it, and replace the existing one with something completely new. Um, for example, Facebook in terms of a communication or a social space, YouTube in the way that we share videos, Uber as a way that we not only transport, uses public transport, but also in terms of food deliveries, electric scooters as another form of public transport, and so forth. These are all examples at various ends of the scale, but examples of radical innovation. These are new things where old ways have been ditched and replaced with new ones. And we would call that radical innovation, a revolution, you might say, in that space. Whereas incremental innovation is more about the series of small, gradual improvements of existing business models, processes, or revenues. So that's more in line with the continuous improvement, this not revolution, but evolution, where we look at things that we're doing as a business and we're constantly tweaking them to be better at it. And again, you'll see with these examples, always highly driven, not always, commonly highly driven by technology. So online banking, online shopping. Banking's always existed to an extent. We had over the counter banking, we had phone banking. Now we've got online banking. Same with shopping. We traditional bricks and mortar. We then did mail order. Well, mail order has been going around for a while, I should say, but it became more predominant. And then we start to see this emergence of online shopping, and we could probably in that space, we could probably look to radical in terms of eBay as a radical model. Um, Driver assisted systems in cars. We now have cars that can park for us or do steering correction. Again, these are incremental, very innovative ideas, very innovative business models, but they're incremental changes. They haven't been necessarily revolution, but more that evolution. So most innovation, particularly when we talk about most existing businesses, most innovations are incremental, and it's often driven by other business management disciplines such as continuous improvement or quality or financial management. Where we've got to save some dollars and everybody hits the whiteboard, and we come up with some ways that we can do things better and often cheaper. And we would call that as well, in certain cases, innovations. So these are often, not in all cases, but often they're the consequence of other activities going on with the business that are driving these innovations. So we can look at radical versus incremental, this idea of revolution versus evolution as a first couple of theories of innovation, and I'll show you a video on this.
Incremental innovation, of course, if we take, for example, an iPod, which is definitely a new product category, but what we are seeing now is a different generation of iPod coming from Apple. So this is a typical example of incremental innovation. Every iPod is a little bit better resolution, a little bit thinner, but that's incremental. That's Apple doing what they're already doing and doing a little bit better. And of course, there are many other companies coming in with the same product, improving incrementally. That's a typical example of incremental innovation, showing that companies are doing something that they are already good at, but improve incrementally. And companies in general are very good in incremental innovation. Radical innovation is, of course, another extreme of the continuum, and we have to understand that radical innovation doesn't happen that often. It doesn't happen frequently, but it does happen. Of course, we can look at an example of radical innovation like invention of internet and introduction of internet, which actually created almost a new revolution. So that's a typical example of radical innovation. We can also look at other examples, for example, like electric cars certainly changed the automotive industry, and all the demands around the sustainability will certainly create a lot of radical innovation, for example, for automotive businesses. So those are examples that illustrate the difference between incremental innovation and radical innovation, where the companies have to engage in something that they are not necessarily good at, something that is really new for them, new for industry, or in some cases like internet, pretty much new to the world.
Some really great examples of radical and incremental innovation in that video. The other, I suppose, theory to bear in mind, which is really important as well in the landscape of innovation, is disruptive versus sustaining innovation. Disruptive innovation is the idea where a new value market is being created. So you've got an existing market, and that services an end user or end users in a particular way. Say it's a company, and the company has, they have heritage in this space. They might be a car maker or a phone maker or a TV maker or something like that, and they own the space in it. And you have a new player will come in, offering pretty much the same service, but coming in at a different angle. So generally speaking, a more cheaper model, and disrupts the market by offering something that is missing from the market at that time. So if we look at smart TVs, for example, you'll have a Sony smart TV. They may be the number one market player. They have the market captured with these U-Butte smart TVs, but often really quite expensive. You'll have a new player will come into the market with a cheap version of the smart TV. May not offer all the things that the Sony does, may not look as smooth, or it might not have all the bells and whistles, but it offers a cheaper version, comes in on the marketplace. They will start to attract some of the market, and as they attract some of the market, they'll continually evolve their model, and before they know it, they're disrupting the existing business model, because then the sustainers, the businesses that are trying to sustain their market through innovation, they're all of a sudden they start to notice this new player in the market. So then they have to start thinking about their own model. How do I respond with this new smart TV producer? Says the people from Sony. So we've got this disruptor. Businesses that will jump into existing markets with a new offering, and generally, and I don't want to say always, but generally a basic offering. And then you've got the sustainers at the other end of the spectrum, the sustainers who focus on their profitable existing model and look for innovation within that. So, Sony continues to make their TVs sleeker or more technologically advanced, or whatever the case may be. So you would say that's an example of a sustainer, and the cheaper model would be the disruptor. And there's lots of examples of that. So we can talk about phones. We can talk about smartphones and Apple as a sustainer. Apple's, when you just heard that gentleman speak before about how Apple keeps evolving, their innovation is incremental. And then you've got Google Phone that came in right at the entry level of the market, captured that market, and then since then have really started to evolve their phone to be and I don't want to say to be on par with Apple because that'll upset some people, but to be a significant player in the market. Hyundai, Kia are another couple of examples of that, where um, they come in with an entry level and then have built that. Honda, if anyone's old enough to know when Honda first came in, were a budget car, and then again disrupt the marketplace and take over. And there's lots of examples of these.
How does a small, young company beat an industry giant on its own turf? Through what Harvard Business School professor Clayton Christensen calls disruptive innovation. It works like this. Big players focus on sustaining innovation, upgrading existing products and services to attract higher paying customers. But soon, they start to ignore all the regular customers who just want simple, low-cost alternatives. That's where the entrepreneurial company jumps in with that basic offering. The big guys stay focused on more profitable customers and begin to overserve, adding bells and whistles no one wants to pay for. Meanwhile, the disruptor improves its product to appeal to more people. By the time the incumbent notices, the disruptor has already started to take over the market. The classic example is the steel mini mills, which first produced low-quality rebar, then moved to sheet steel, stealing business from the large mills that had been dominant. More recent disruptors include car makers like Toyota and Hyundai, which launched with economy models, then added luxury features and brands. The only way for industry giants to fight back is by launching their own disruptive innovations. To succeed, they must treat the project as a separate unit with a different business model and growth expectations. Ask, what job do customers need to get done? Segment customers by job, not by product, market size, or demographics. And develop basic, low-cost ways to get the job done. That's how Procter & Gamble came up with Crest White Strips, a cheap, do-it-yourself alternative to an expensive dental service. Disruptive innovation creates new markets and reshapes existing ones. To achieve growth in a fast-changing world, you want to be a disruptor. Don't be disrupted.
Okay, so that's a really good breakdown of disruptive innovation, and we can see that when you become familiar with that definition, you can see that it really quite commonly around the place. So even things like if you go down to your local craft brewer, that's an example of a disruptor. People who are coming in at a particular end of the market. Doesn't necessarily, as I said, doesn't necessarily always have to be on the cheap end, but where they're looking to come into the marketplace in the margins. So we talk about the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. And I talk about, for most organizations, 80% of their profits will come from 20% of their customers. That means that 80% of your customers will only generate 20% of your profits if we look at the other side of the coin. So it's not unusual for businesses to really focus on that 20% of the customer. So again, it's not unusual for businesses to classify their customers, and your business may do this, where you have like a 3-tier, gold, silver, and bronze, where your gold customers will be your 20%ers who make 80% of your profit. Your silver will be the next tier down, and your bronze are the customers that you probably don't make any money on. And I had one business manager once tell me, they're the customers that we'd love to put in a taxi and send to our competitors because often they cost you money. And it was tongue in cheek, obviously, but because you do, in some cases, you do want to nurture those customers because they will be the future silver and gold customers. But a competitor will come in and will identify those customers on the margins, and it might be your bronze customer or some of your silver customers, and go, you know what, that business isn't really focused on them, and we've got a good opportunity to come in there and disrupt the market a little bit. So there are examples of those, and we see them all over the place once you become more familiar with the concept. So what does that mean? Well, we can look at innovation then from these quadrants. and we can think about it in terms of two dimensions. Uh, the problem that needs defining, or the problem that needs to be dealt with, and the way that we define that problem, which in this quadrant is called the domain definition. So we call the problem definition what the issue is. We call the domain, we can define the domain definition by the pathway to the solution. So where you have a problem that you really know what the problem is, it's well defined. We've got this particular problem that our customers or our end users aren't happy with, and we need to find a way to be better at that. But you don't know what the pathway to that is, and you're working through that. You're really looking for that breakthrough innovation. You're looking for new ideas that are going to enhance, it's going to break through existing pathways that we don't already have. So, we're looking for something new in there. Whereas if we know what the problem is and we know the pathway there, this is the continuous improvement model. This is where we're just tweaking things and we're just sustaining innovation. We know how to deal with these issues. We know what the problem is, and we know how to the path to solving those is well worn. We're really just sustaining it. And then, of course, you've got the other end of the scale where we don't really know what the problem is. And we don't really know the pathway there, so we don't know we don't know the problem, and we don't know pathway there. And really what we're talking about here is frontier research. This is stuff where, it's R&D stuff where we don't really know what the problem is, and we don't really know how to get there. But we're playing around with stuff. So, examples I've got on there, like Albert Einstein or any of those research academics that have breakthrough theories, that really at the forefront of our thinking. But also stuff like, and I've put in their search algorithm, because if you look at the history of Google, and you may know the history of Google better than I do, but really they're just a couple of guys at uni doing a computer course at uni, a software engineering course, and accidentally, well, I don't know how accidental, but coming up with the algorithm that is the basis for what we know today as Google search. So that's academic research come up as frontier research. I mean, if you go onto the story, the guys then approached Yahoo to try and sell it, and Yahoo didn't want anything to do with it. So I think they asked for $1 million. Yahoo laughed at them. They went back with $750,000. They still laughed at them. So they said, "All right, let's go and let's do something with it ourselves. We know the pathway to using this algorithm because now we've been playing with it quite a bit. So in domain definition, we're now getting into the well-defined, how to use this and how to get there. But we don't know what the problem is, so we're just going to keep playing around with it. And this is now where we start to see new markets emerge. And from that simple frontier research of a search algorithm, we now have the emergence of Google as a product that hadn't really as something new, hadn't been done previously before. I mean, we had other search platforms, but nothing like Google. So this is an example of where we can take something from frontier research to disruptive innovation. Other examples of that of disruptive innovation, Uber and Airbnb as some other examples of that. So we can see from this matrix that innovation really comes in different forms and different shapes, depending on the context of it. So what does that mean for you? Well, it's helpful in terms of understanding innovation in your workplace. What is it that we do? What's our business all about? What's the purpose of our business? What's the nature of our business? What's, depending on your role in the business, what's our culture around innovation and continuous improvement? What are our products and services? And what model fits best for us? Is it around that sustainability or that sustaining innovation? Or is it more that breakthrough innovation? Are we really on in terms of disrupting or on sustaining, or are we more in terms of incremental instead of radical, or the other way around, depending on the nature of the business and what you do? So these theories, though, they're not they're not pragmatic for us. That's the nature of theories. It's not actual skill or application. It does help to inform us in terms of making best decisions about how we implement uh, practices into our workplace. In this case, innovative practices. So the theory helps to inform us in terms of what's the best way to apply innovation in our workplace. So when I talk to my team about innovation and creating innovation culture, really, what am I talking about when I talk about innovation? Am I talking about this sustaining innovation where we're going to look for incremental opportunities, or am I talking about radical or disruptive type of innovation? Depend on your workplace, depend on the role, and so forth.